In this clip, I'm going to be sharing another children's book that I purchased for my daughter a few years ago. I have mentioned here on my channel a lot of the different self-affirmation tools that I have used for her, especially regarding affirming self-love for our crown, understanding that we are divinely created, and then there isn't any other way that we ought to see ourselves. This is a really good book here. It is called Cute and Curly by Rosemary Allen. And I'm gonna show here who she is. And it just states here, Rosemary Allen has served as a leader in early childhood education for nearly 40 years. Her life's work is centered on ensuring children have access to high-quality early childhood programs that are developmentally and culturally appropriate. I love being able to find authors who understand how important it is to have our children reading culturally appropriate and affirming books, and understanding that, there is no shame in wanting that for our children. I know a lot of times a lot of people feel like, it is an overstatement to continuously teach your child to love themselves. And I really have learned to separate myself from the naysayers who obviously do not walk this life, who do not understand our cultural differences and what our children deal with. Not all children are treated the same in our society, so I think it's really important for us as Black mothers within this diaspora to drown out those naysayers and continue to do what it is that we are required to build our daughters up. Our sons are just as important as well when it comes to affirming self-love within them. So this is what the cover looks like. And then once we get into the book, I really like the illustrations here. It definitely brings back a lot of those hair care regimen memories for me. I feel like for us within the diaspora, our hair routines were very much the bulk of our lives. Having our hair done was always something that was very strenuous, very kind of stressful, but also very relieving and very connecting and bonding with our mothers. I feel like, especially being someone who, has always had coily textured hair, I definitely am affirming that, when it comes to the texture of our hair and it not being loose curls, that it's okay. There's nothing else that we ought to be. There's nothing else that we want to be. Yeah, it may be difficult at times, but, with patience and, understanding, we can, work our way through it. And I think it builds a lot of love within mother-daughter relationships. So this is some of the illustrations here. It just states here, I love getting my hair washed. I definitely was able to resonate over this. Like I said, my experiences, as a little Black girl, my hair was very much the bulk of my existence and all of the things that we had to do, and just understanding that there's a lot of legwork that goes into this hair, but it is definitely something that is worth appreciating. Our moms, stress very much over wanting us to look decent and presentable and, be able to go to school for picture days and do all of these things, and just being able to understand how stressful those experiences were for our mothers, and how much hatred that, Black women get for people believing that, it's an easy task to just whip our hair up and go, and it's not something that is that simple. Ours is a lot more complex, and understanding those experiences is definitely a cultural difference when it comes to other people, and teaching our daughters that is very important. So it's just got, different pieces here talking about all of the different hair care products that we have to use, you know, curling creams, butters, and conditioning sprays, and lots of different things that go into our hair care regimens to soften our hair and make our curls more manageable. So this is the first couple of pages. And I love this page here because it states, excuse me, you know, kind of understanding that bonding moment with mom when we're doing, you know, hair. I definitely try to empathize with my daughter over hair because, you know, it's time consuming. It can be a lot for us to handle, but it definitely brings us closer together and understanding and loving one another and knowing, you know, getting our daughters to understand. It is stressful for me to try to make you perfect for the world to accept. And I think that is something that is a huge stress for a lot of black moms, is we end up with this ideology of perfectionism when it comes to our children because we don't want to hear the harsh critics who have something to say about our children's hair all the time. And my daughter is definitely learning that, you know, hair has become so important that it is, you know, tiresome. So I just love being able to connect over these experiences. Like I said, we, you know, are one and the same, you know, as black children, you know, having black parents and, you know, having afro hair, and I mean real afro hair, is very different than, you know, than the next type of hair for other girls. So I think it's more of an overstatement to really teach them to love themselves. And what I like about this book is in the back here, there are some, and I'll get to that in a few minutes here. There's some other pictures, but there are some parts in this book that talk about hair care regimens and things that you can do to soften curls. But I didn't want to pass this page here because I love that the imagery here is just so deep. It states here, I want to say please don't touch my hair. I think they just like my curls and can't help it, but I wish they wouldn't touch my hair. I think this is definitely something that's really important for our daughters to know, you know, when it comes to being in public spaces with people outside of your race and, you know, being the spectacle all of the time, and people who are just so absorbed into what we have going on with ourselves that they just violate our boundaries and, you know, do things that make us uncomfortable. And I'm definitely someone who speaks a lot about children not being subjected to adults or other children violating their boundaries. I feel like it is definitely something that should be taken more seriously nowadays, especially with the amount of heresy that a lot of our children are dealing with. It definitely needs to be seen as a criminal offense. It is not okay for our children to be touched in a way that they don't want to be. So I definitely love that that was reflected in this book. However, there are lots of really deeply culturally significant parts in this book. And this is the section that I was kind of referencing. This one says, cute and curly explanation for black hair care routines for natural hair. So it just talks about how there are different combs that we have to use, wide tooth combs, afro picks, and rat tail combs to part, and all of these different tools that go into our regimens that not everyone has to do. So it definitely makes us different, but I think that it is okay for our children to know that just because you're different doesn't make you any less of a person. And then this just kind of talks about who this book was really created to reflect. I think this was, as it stated in the beginning, a book about her daughter and understanding the experiences as a mom herself with her daughter's hair. She does have another series where, like this one states, stylish and straight, just kind of reflecting the diversity of how we can wear our hair. I know a lot of black girls, we have those memories of sitting under the hot comb and seeing our hair in different ways, and just learning to love yourself from all angles is definitely something that will help them get through life and understand that when they get to a certain age, it isn't up for debate whether or not someone else feels like their hair is beautiful. It's not for anyone else. So I definitely love having this book and wanting my daughter to really actualize over it and truly deeply know that I don't need to change, I don't need to rearrange, I don't need to abandon self in order for me to feel that I am connected to a grouping of sorts. So this is definitely a great read. I would definitely recommend for anyone who is looking for books that are written by fellow black mothers in the diaspora. This is definitely a really cute book. And I hope you enjoyed this clip.